Originally, I just wanted this to be a simple chat about charging etiquette, and I was going to show you a photo of a car that I think was doing it wrong, and I was going to say the heading of this would be, "Don't be this guy." But when I looked at it, I sort of thought about, well, charging can be a bit hard because you have multiple bays, multiple chargers, and sometimes your plug's on the wrong side of the car, or at the front or at the back. Sometimes it's at the middle of your bonnet, and you can't really sort of say what's going to happen when you turn up at a multi-bay car charging place and several cars have sort of already been there and gone, or are sort of not doing the right thing. So I thought, you got to think about this a bit. But anyway, I'll show you the photo. Basically, the guy parked in one bay and then took the charging cable from another side of the machine and put it across to his, thus shutting down two potential charging bays, especially if the other person's charger didn't match with the location that was possible with the charger that was in place. But then when you think about it, you've got to think in terms of, well, how do they design charging bays? I mean, most of the time, the ones we've experienced have been on the edges of car parks, have been in specific sites, and that also complicates things. But I was thinking, well, maybe they should rethink a bit of that. And one of the things I start to think about is where they put the charging sites. Now, if you go online and have a browse of the various different charging apps like ChargeFox, EV, and a few of the others, Tesla even, you'll see that most of them make a promise of only charging in areas less than 200 kilometres away. But it's kind of like the mobile phone system. There's coverage based on demography and coverage based on geography. So when you go to their maps and you zoom out a little bit, suddenly the charging stations get a little sparse, especially in some areas. Like, for instance, if you're heading down to the Western Districts of Victoria, you get a few gambling spots where it doesn't really tie well with charging opportunities. Mind you, we were quite happy. We came from Kensington, which is near Flemington Racecourse, and we drove through Geelong, which I'm sure had a lot of them, and got to a place just outside called Winchelsea. And there's an excellent little charging spot there, an EV charging spot, or EV, and it had two right next to quite a good coffee shop, so that was beneficial to us. Then we were going on to Portland, so that's about a 4-hour drive from Melbourne, I guess you'd say, as the crow flies. So then we looked at Colac, and we had a bit of trouble finding the ones in Colac, but there were several, so I can't complain there. And then we went to Camperdown, and we know through another family member that there's a terrific charging station in Camperdown just behind a pub. So what you usually do is you park your car, especially in the evenings, you go up to the pub, you have a nice counter meal. By the time you get back to your car, it's probably charged enough or fully charged, depending on your needs. It's pretty exposed, so in winter it can be a bit wet and dreary. And if you've got anyone disabled or hard to walk, it's best to drop them off where you're going to go and then go to the site and then have the driver come and pick them up again when it's finished. But still, it's a great site. But then you face choices. Now, there's 3 ways you can really go on to Warrnambool, which is the next stop in your trip. One way, you can go via Mortlake, and there's a charging spot somewhere there, but we didn't risk it. If you miss that one, you're shit out of luck. The other way you can go is via Cobden, and again, that diverts around Camperdown, so basically you go up to an area called Stony Rises, and there's a point to turn, and you go through some really nice countryside, but the charging spots are sparse again. And then there's a third way, which is just down the Pacific Highway. And that's quite nice, except sometimes especially during school holidays, special events like Labor Day weekend and a few of the other public holidays. That can be really crowded and not always the easiest way to get through. But it's still populated by a number of charging sites, and once you get to Warrnambool, there's some terrific charging spots there. Some free, some partially free, some you need your cable, some you don't need your cable, and there's Teslas there, so you can charge pretty fast if you've got the right EV vehicle, I guess you say, and it's rated to take charge from the Tesla ones. And then you can head on to Portland, and again, there's a few charges there. Some of them aren't free, some of them require patronage of either a hotel or a motel, and the rest are public. There's one, I don't know if you know Portland, but it's got a Chadmo, which is the other gamble, or a CCS2. So we're a CCS2 car. Chadmos are more of an older charging model, but you can still go to them, but it's one or the other. So that's the first thing. You gamble going to certain areas with a charging vehicle because of the fact that the public charging may either be Chadmo or CCS2. Don't worry about the dogs. They'll quieten down in a minute. They're just playing. Or you can go CCS2 way, but you have to have one or the other. Some people say you can get cables that can do it. But then you go online and the cables say, no, they don't work. So just remember to look up on PlugShare or whatever charging app you're using that PlugShare says is the type of charging app that's available. So you've got the coverage issue, demographics or geographics. Then you've got the issue about where would be the right location for chargers. And for me, I'm thinking if you had a car park, you'd put the charger in the middle of the car park so that cars could drive from either side or from both sides, not on the edge, because they can come in front ways, they can come in back ways, they can come left, come right. And then it sort of suits things a lot better than just having them on an edge. I know an edge makes it easier and possibly there is a safety issue and design issue. But for me, as EV charging goes up, you probably want to have a middle of the park place to charge. So then you've got that issue. You've got your front, your back, your left, your right on your machine and also on your car. And so that would mean that it would be more serviceable, if maybe it was on a rotary base, and so you could spin it around a bit, or but certainly in the middle of a car park. The other one you talk about, well, what people could benefit from setting up charging models. I mean, a while back, there was a phase where you could buy an ATM machine, a cash machine, and you take a little commission, and it was about 50,000 when they were first floated. And that seemed like a reasonable idea. You invest 50,000, you take responsibility for the ATM, and you have a network of banks who supply into that ATM, and you use it like an investment. So who would be best to offer that side of thing for designing EV stations? I mean, the idea is to get as many as possible, really. So there's convenience, like petrol stations, for instance. And one of them suggested that, well, you look at a petrol station, it's often out in the middle of nowhere. It often has very big oven to cover areas, which makes it ideal for having solar panels on the roof. It also has fuel, so generators. So you could basically add another string to the petrol station bow. Now, of course, there's a bit of a problem in Victoria because of a company called Vivo, who seem to like to lock down petrol dependency. And so anything that looks like it might benefit anything other than petrol, or diesel for that matter, gets a little bit of a lobbyist resistance. But anyway, petrol stations is one option. The other one, I think, which is the one I saw in Winchelsea, was tourism. If your council really is wanting to draw people into a small town and get them to stay there, well, charging stations are a pretty good way of doing it. First, because it increases the comfortable range a vehicle can go to. But secondly, it keeps them there for a while. And while they're there, they see a coffee shop, they see a delicatessen, they see a restaurant, they might consider dropping in for a meal. So then you've multiplied the benefit of collecting revenue from the charging station or a commission from its placement, and you add on the fact of drawing more people to the area. Soon you're looking at electric buses. In fact, the British have got BYD buses coming onto board with the new Blade technology. So bigger, larger, more important vehicles, perhaps for the transport industry, are starting to go electric as well. I mean, the self-driving business, well, you know, if you think about it, Elon Musk has sort of killed that from Valentine's Day of this year, actually. It may not be cost effective unless you're loaded to the gunnels with cash to have FSD or a Tesla, because there's just so many alternatives, but also because he is dumbing down the driving functions in the Teslas. Maybe that'll change when he sees there's not revenue, but he's in it for the $1 trillion return for himself. So I can't imagine him changing his mind. He's pretty stubborn. So you've got that choice of, well, we put it in a small town, draws people, have a cafe, have a coffee shop, have a restaurant, and it brings people and keeps them there for long enough that there's more money can be spent in the area. And then I thought about, well, you think of a petrol station. Okay, now petrol stations are pretty much self-service, but you still use a cashier. Whereas with EV vehicles, the charging stations are basically all self-service, i.e. you do the banking side of things, like you charge it to your credit card or Apple Pay or Android, Google Pay, whatever. You put the power in yourself, you take the power machine out, and it's all just a unit the size of a tall cupboard. Plus all the technology that goes into it as well, and the charging. But that infrastructure can be put basically anywhere. And if you put solar nearby, and if you put, you know, generators nearby, you're offering a pretty good string of features that a small town, or even a bigger town, or even a potential investor can sort of pick up on. And the final one, hang on a moment. So having had to open the door to let someone in, I think it's about time I wind up. It really was only to basically say, don't be that guy. Think about etiquette when you're charging. Think about other people around you. Don't pull up to one bay, take control of 2 bays, or make it harder for anyone else to use the chargers. I'm just a beginner with charging, so for me it's still fun to go to chargers and even just talk to people about charging, their experiences with their EV vehicles, and in the future I'd kind of like to talk to them about the operating systems and see how their control system in their car varies to the control system in our car. Our car is one of the new Geelys, the X5 2026 model. And it's got its quirks and sillinesses, lots of noises, but we quite like it. We're frustrated at a few things, but we still quite like it. So really, this wasn't intended to be a long thing. This was just intended to be a chat about my experiences with EV vehicles. And this wasn't even intended to be a critique or a consideration. It was just intended to be, don't be that guy, because that seemed to make me quite angry. And I'm an older man, so I'm entitled to be angry, or not entitled, rather, I'm quite often more angry, you know, blood pressure and so forth. So, yep, I'll just finish off here. I'm going to try and edit this. Again, sorry for the barking dogs. I'm sort of retired and I'm looking after one dog, and family members decided they wanted another because noise and chaos is just not enough with only one dog. So anyway, bye for now.